Okay, good afternoon once again, Santa Barbara area. This is Charles Botts here with Career Team. I'm the Director of Training and Communications, and I'm thrilled, absolutely thrilled, to be back for our third week together, our third session together. This week we are covering time management. Woo! I know. Not particularly flashy, but absolutely a critical skill, a critical resource to be successful throughout the career process, whether we're starting off, whether we're in a transition, or we are looking to ascend, looking to climb the ladder wherever we are. And time management is one of those universal attributes. It applies across industries, it applies across positions. Everyone needs to be able to manage their time well. And so we are excited to join together with y'all for another 60 minutes this week covering time management. So welcome in and welcome aboard. Again, as I said, my name is Charles Botts. I'm the Director of Training and Communications for Career Team. Career Team is a national workforce provider. We manage contracts, we develop and maintain a software platform, and we are also providers, training providers. So we have our hands in a couple different things. The first week, I was able to embed a brief video on who we are as an organization. This week, I've decided, because I wasn't able to show it last week, so this week what we're going to do is we're going to actually just bring up the video separately. So if you give me 1 second, hopefully, let me make sure that I can share my screen. And we'll hopefully be able to. Nope. I guess we're out of luck with the video. It's not showing up on my shared options, and I'm not going to drag out this time. So we're gonna figure it out. I'm gonna get to the bottom of this, and we are gonna show this video once again. The first week it worked beautifully. It worked. It went off without a hitch, and last week we tried it again, and we're not as fortunate, and so not sure what's happening, but that's all right. That's all right. We're gonna push forward and continue with the presentation. So Career Team, as I mentioned, we are a workforce service provider. We manage workforce development contracts across the country. Why do I bring that up? I bring that up because it helps to contextualize the knowledge and the expertise that we bring to our training interactions. Something we think is very important, particularly to our audiences, to understand that we come to this work, we come to this space as practitioners, as doers. We are not just a president of the Hair Club for Men. We are also clients. We have staff that are in the field every day, working remote, working with career seekers coming into American Job Center and other such locations, looking for support, looking for help. And we do that. We manage WIOA, WIOA contracts. We work with youth. We work with adults. We manage TANF for food stamp contracts, individuals that are getting cash assistance. We work with the range, with veterans, with individuals exiting the criminal justice system, individuals in all manner of transition. And so I say that to say we're working with folks just like each and every one of you, individuals that are further along in their career and are just looking for that little tweak, just looking for that little boost, that little edge to give them over the hump and get to that next step in their career, and individuals just getting started off, looking for that first opportunity, looking for that first step, that first entry into a career, and everyone in between. So we're excited to be on with you once again. And this week we are covering time management. I know not something that we really think about in terms of exciting content, but I think we're going to make it fun for you today. I think we're going to make it enjoyable. Most importantly, I think we're going to walk away having learned some things. So let's jump right into it. We are Career Team. That's who we are. And today we are discussing time management. So start off with a little bit of trivia, and do me a favor if you wouldn't mind. A couple of housekeeping things. I'm getting ahead of myself wanting to jump into the content. So I'll give you a little bit of extra time to think about the riddle that we've put up on the screen. But just before I read this, a couple of housekeeping things. Everyone is set to mute. Everyone is set to mute. I appreciate that. If you have a question, if you have a comment, if you have feedback, thoughts, suggestions, anything at all that you want to share, please use the chat. And as a matter of fact, if you wouldn't mind, please enter your name in the chat window so that the team at the Santa Barbara Career Center is able to record attendance. We want to make sure that you get credit for coming in today and put us in a position to follow up with you if you do need some additional support. So if you wouldn't mind going ahead and just putting your name in the chat window there so that we can record your attendance. Already see a name coming in, so appreciate that, John, and ask everyone else that's joining us today to go ahead and enter your name in the chat window. You can also use the chat to post questions, to provide feedback. I do try to make it very interactive, even though we're virtual, even though we're remote. I still want to hear from you or read from you, I guess. So I really do want your feedback. So I will pose certain questions and give you an opportunity to respond into the chat window. And so, ask that you would use the chat window for that. You can certainly take yourself off mute. You do have the ability to do that if you want to vocalize your question, your feedback, your comment. You can take yourself off mute. We welcome that. That's not a problem at all. Just pop yourself off mute, make your comment, pose your question, and then put yourself back on mute. Give us an opportunity to respond. And so with that being said, if you have a thought as to what do the CEO, manager, and technician all have in common, why don't you put that into the chat window? What do the CEO, manager, and technician all have in common? If you have a guess, if you have a thought, you can put it in the chat. Take yourself off mute. I'll give you a second to think about that a little more. What do the CEO, manager, and technician all have in common? What do we think? Any guesses? Any thoughts? Okay. All right. So here it is. Here's the punchline. They all have 24 hours in a day. They all have 24 hours in a day. It doesn't matter. That's the common denominator across classes, across ethnicities, across the globe. The one thing outside of being human beings, the one thing kind of we all have in common is everyone gets 24 hours to the day. Nobody gets more than that. Doesn't matter how wealthy you are, how influential you are. It doesn't matter if you're just getting started off, if you're at the very top. Everyone is allotted 24 hours a day, no more, no less. So what do you do? What do you do with the time that you have allotted? Where does your time go? If we have 24 hours a day, there's 7 days a week. We have 168 total hours every week. That's all we get. That's all we get, guys. We don't get more than that. We don't get less. We get 168 hours every week to do the very best that we can to maximize that. So how are you spending it? Well, this is a typical breakdown. This is kind of an average breakdown. So, again, if we if 7 days a week, if we spend 8 hours a night,
Yeah, I had to have Rosie's help.
which is kind of the recommendation. Did
She's
we have?
got a different phone number than I had.
Okay. So I'm just gonna make sure that we're staying on mute unless we have a comment. If we have a comment or a question, love to hear it. Otherwise, let's make sure we're staying on mute. Appreciate that. So yeah, so you get 168 hours, and so if you sleep an average of 8 hours a night, I know many of us don't. But that's kind of the recommendation. 7 to 8 hours a night is kind of the recommendation for your longevity, for your health. Kind of alleviate stress, all those sorts of things. That's 56 hours right there sleeping. So anywhere from 49, if you're getting 7 to 8, 49 to 56 hours a night sleeping. So that's a portion of your week right there, 56 hours sleeping. 35 hours working or studying. So again, many of us, if we are working full-time, we're looking to work full-time, that may be closer to 40 hours a week. But we may be in a part-time situation, or we may not get 40 hours necessarily. So anywhere between 35 and 40 hours a week working. So between work and sleep, that's that's half your time, more than half your time right there. Working and sleeping. If 56 and 35, you're looking at 89 hours working and sleeping. You get another 21 hours a week eating and bathing. Again, you chalk it up, you calculate that to about 3 hours a day when you think about, if you're doing, kind of a breakfast, lunch, dinner, maybe you do some snacks, you're getting yourself ready in the morning, or maybe you're someone that likes to take a shower before bed, what have you. 21 hours a week, 3 hours a day, roughly we spend kind of eating and bathing, eating and grooming. And then the balance is another 56 hours kind of doing everything else, running errands, household chores, spending time with family, entertainment, athletics, going to the gym. If you're a meditative person, if you're a person of faith, going to a worship service, even if it's online, going to church, what have you. We got 56 hours kind of do everything else. That's the general breakdown. So, something to think about. Maybe it's worthwhile for each one of us to kind of go through our week, see if we can calculate, especially if we're not getting that full 7 to 8 hours. If we're not getting that full 7 to 8 hours a night, our total hours of sleeping goes down. If we're somewhere around 42 hours, that's another 14 hours or so. What are we doing with that time? If we're not working or what have you? So, it's important to know to kind of try to keep hold of that, because time is a limited commodity. It's a limited commodity. Remember, doesn't matter how much money you make. You're never going to get more than 24 hours a day. You're never going to get more than 168 hours a week. Nothing you can do about that. Time really is our most precious commodity, because there's nothing that we can do to increase it. It is always fleeting. There is never enough of it. So we can understand, we can then appreciate, if time is such a valuable and limited resource, then time management has got to be critical. So why do we want to spend time focusing on preparing, thinking about time management? What are some of the benefits of improving our time management? Well, for one, when we have strong time management skills, we can get started right now. We can get started right away. When you have strong time management skills, you don't have to push off. You don't have to set aside. You don't have to. There's a P word I'm thinking about that kind of goes hand in hand with time. And you guys are familiar with it. It is. We're going to talk a lot about it a little bit later on in the presentation. Procrastination. When you have good time management skills, you won't procrastinate. You don't need to procrastinate. When you have good time management skills, you're not forgetting things. You're not leaving things off, leaving things behind. You're not neglecting your responsibilities, those things that you're required to do. So you're not forgetting things. You have more time. You have more time to enjoy life. You have more time for fun. If you're very good at time management, you're very good at organizing your time, you realize that you really can. You've got about 56 hours a week, maybe a little bit more if you're a little better about managing kind of your meal times and those sorts of things. Maybe you don't get 8 hours of sleep a night. Maybe you get 7 hours of sleep. So you got about 56 hours a week, though, that you can play with, which, will give you time. It will give you time for fun. It'll give you time to enjoy more of life. You're not stuck kind of in that routine of, you're getting up, you're getting ready, you go to work, you grind away, you come back, you spend maybe a couple minutes with folks or, what have you, and then you're back to bed and you start all over again the next day. When we're better at managing our time, we have more of it to do other things. Again, you're not going to get more than that 24, but we better manage the 24 that we have. You free your mind. When you are managing your time, you can start to automate some things. You can start to schedule some things so that they happen kind of automatically. And in doing that, you free your mind. You free your mind. You're less burdened by stress and, oh, what was I supposed to do? Did I miss a meeting? I think I've got something coming up. Oh my goodness. You free your mind of the anxiety of having forgot something. Remember, the second bullet was not forgetting. And so when we don't forget, we free our mind. We're going to learn to prioritize. We're going to learn to put things kind of in order. And that's going to be, on an individual basis. It really is going to be up to you what things get the focus of your time, which things kind of get done first as you're managing your time, as you're allocating your time. So you learn to prioritize, and ultimately you learn smarter, not harder. You work smarter, not harder. You live smarter, not harder. Time management is a key to help us live a more fulfilled, smarter, efficient life. I do also want to say, it looks like we have some folks that have just joined us, which is great. Welcome. Great to have you on board. If you wouldn't mind entering your name in the chat window, in the chat box. If you put your mouse on the Zoom meeting controls, there is usually those three dots to expand the menu, although you may have the chat option right in your Zoom meeting controls. But if you wouldn't mind clicking on the chat link and just entering your name into the chat window so that we can record attendance, that would be fantastic. So one of the keys we looked at it briefly on the previous slide. One of the keys to time management is learning to prioritize. It is learning to prioritize, and in doing that, it really is a threefold process. Learning to prioritize is a threefold process. You're making a list of things that you think you need to do. You're making a list of your goals, and then you're evaluating your activity, your tasks based on your goals. And many times what happens is when you evaluate your activity based on the goals that you've established that you need to accomplish, you'll realize the things that you think you need to do might not be necessary. And in fact, you may uncover some things that you hadn't listed previously that you need to do. Let me show you an example. So here we go. Here are our task lists. Here's our goals. And then here's sort of the priority. The priority. So our desired goals: to find a new or better career, to look good, to make cookies for the weekend, to submit for review and feedback a resume that you can use to start applying. So these are some of our goals. These are some of our goals. So the tasks: do research. I want to start a career. I want to find more about a new and better career. So I'm going to do some research. That's something that I want to do soon. That's something that I want to do soon. I want to get a haircut to look good. You know, I want to look good. I want to look the part, right? And you guys can tell I must get a lot of haircuts. Just having a little fun with you. But yeah, I think it's important. You look good, you feel good. So how do we do that? We want to get a haircut. Well, is that something that needs to happen high on the priority list? Well, when I consider my limited amount of time, if I consider what I want to get done today, that's not going to be high on the priority list. So that would be something that would maybe be organized as, we're just not going to do that. We're not going to do that right now. I need to go grocery shopping because I want to make cookies for the weekend. Again, when I consider the things that I've got going on, that might be something that I would organize as doing later. And then ultimately, I'm going to revise my resume because I want to submit it to my job coach. I want to submit it to my career counselor. I want to submit it to my mentor for review and feedback. And so that's the thing that I'm going to work on right now. Now, ultimately, team, you can move these things around. You can move these things around. The benefit, the value of an exercise like this, of using a chart like this, is it gives you the ability to lay out in front of you what you have going on or what you plan to do and what are the goals you hope to achieve. And ultimately, you're going to prioritize. At some point in time, getting the haircut has got to move from don't do to do now. At some point in time, I mean, if it is that important. Now, ultimately, as you stack it up among the other things that you have going on, it may never move beyond do later, because the other things that you have going on may always be more important, but maybe not. You have an interview coming up. Even though it's a virtual interview, you're still going to want to look the part. And so getting the haircut may very well move up on the priority list. The key is, by mapping it out for yourself, by laying it out, you can start to prioritize. And prioritizing gives you the ability to organize your time. Prioritizing gives you the ability to organize your time. Prioritizing, one more time, I know, but it gives you the ability to organize your time. So that is the benefit. That's the benefit to prioritizing. And this is one way to do it. And in particular, we're so passionate about this particular method, this charting method, because it puts you in control. One of the biggest challenges with time management is, when do I have the time to put forward this kind of plan, to put forward this kind of effort? And ultimately, when you write down your goals, your goals for the day, your goals for the week, and I think maybe we just start there, particularly if you're newer to this. If you're someone that's doing this kind of thing and you're looking to take it to the next level, then it may be about doing it for your month, doing it for the year, doing it for the next 2 or 3 years. And again, if we could just keep ourselves off mute, if we could keep ourselves on mute.
Anything bad? No, huh?
Unless we're posing a question. Yep, so if we could just try to stay on mute, I appreciate that.
That's if you have
so we want to put ourselves in position where we have an idea, we have a clear understanding, a clear visual of what our goals are. And this chart helps us to do that. Once I have my goals, then it's about organizing the tasks based on the goals and then ranking them. So you got your goals, the tasks based on the goals, the tasks that you're going to use to achieve the goals, and then you're ranking them, you're prioritizing them. And it's going to, again, it's going to shift, it's going to move from day to day. But this is a great place to start. This is a great place to start. Okay. Questions, thoughts, comments, reactions, as we move down the path of getting our better control of our time, getting better management over our time. Questions, thoughts so far? I want to make sure I don't go so fast or dig into it so deep that I don't give folks an opportunity to ask some questions. Is anybody using something like this today? Is anybody using something like this now? Any kind of to-do list, any kind of prioritization list or chart? Or is this kind of the first time you've seen anything like this? Okay. All right. Got it. Got it. So some first timers. Okay. Okay. Well, listen, if there's something else that you're doing, would absolutely love to hear it. Or, maybe if there's a tool that you're using, you want to put a link in the chat as well. We can share with the other members that are on with us today. That would be great. Would love to hear it, but I'm glad that this is helpful. Several lists for priorities. Yeah. Yeah. You know what? So I did see a comment come in about Microsoft being someone's friend. I got to tell you, one of my favorite tools, guys, if you haven't checked this out, it comes with the Microsoft Office 365 subscription. You may be able to get it as a standalone. I don't know if my friend Janie, who mentioned that Microsoft is their friend, OneNote. Microsoft OneNote is one of my go-tos. I tell you what, guys, it keeps me organized. It's kind of a central repository for notes, for information, as I'm developing trainings. If I'm in a meeting and I've got to take notes and refer back to something later, Microsoft OneNote is one of my absolute go-tos. It is a great tool, absolutely something I would encourage you to check out if you haven't before. Okay, so someone threw in the chat, I'm not familiar with this one. Color Note app has folders for books, passwords, etc. And this person's going to check out OneNote. But yeah, okay, so Color Note, I'm going to have to look into that. I've not heard of that one before. But sounds very similar to a lot of what you can do with OneNote. So that's very cool. The nice thing about OneNote too is if you have a family and just like a group or a team, individuals that you maybe work with or collaborate with, our family, my family has a 365 subscription. And so it's actually a great way that my wife and I keep track of, like kind of family passwords, but we can also kind of review and update material. So if we're working on a project together, if we've got something coming up, we doing something for the kids, or the teachers are sharing information, we can put something in the OneNote and share it. and we are able to review it and update it kind of right in real time. We can even both be working on the same document at the same time in OneNote. So, again, I don't own stock in Microsoft. I don't work for Microsoft. So, ultimately, definitely check out some other ones out there. We just heard about ColorNote, so definitely check out ColorNote. And Evernote. Evernote is another big one out there. Again, that folks like to use. That's very versatile. It's mobile as well as a desktop program. It's web-based, so you can kind of access it all over the place. So great feedback, guys. Really appreciate that. One of the challenges, I don't know, I've got little ones. So this is, from the Disney Pixar movie Up. And actually some of my colleagues and I love this because this really does very much describe some of our personalities. Sometimes while I'm working on a project, I get a little squirrel. We get distracted. And if you haven't seen the movie, definitely encourage you to check it out. It's a fun movie. But this is a clip from the movie. Essentially it's a dog, and the dog is interacting with the other character, and his attention is easily diverted anytime you think he's so that's kind of a fun one. So, but ultimately, when it comes to time management, when it comes to productivity, we have to do ourselves a favor and start to eliminate those distractions, which can be particularly challenging when we're at home. If we're working from home, if we are, having to do a lot from home because libraries may be closed or have very limited hours. The job centers may be closed or have very limited hours. Starbucks may only be letting in certain number of people at a time, or what have you. Wherever you may go to hop on some Wi-Fi and do some work. Eliminating distractions is a challenge, but it's absolutely critical. It's absolutely critical to reclaiming your time, to getting a hold of your time. And so, you really want to think about what are some of the things that distract you. Now, this is going to be different for everyone. And some folks may benefit from a little bit of white noise, from a little bit of ambient noise. And so, you may need a little music in the background, or you may be able to listen to, I like to listen to audiobooks and podcasts while I'm working on certain things. Now, certain things. I guess that's the other piece of it too, is it really is depending on where you are in terms of your timing and what you're accomplishing, what you're trying to get done. If I'm having to produce work, if I'm having to produce a product, kind of an original product, generally I don't have a lot playing or going on in the background. Generally, if I'm needing to be creative, if I'm needing to develop or produce something, for me, generally, I'm going to be, in a little bit more of a quiet environment in that situation. If I'm doing more, more administrative, more technical work, if I'm, responding to inquiries and following up on things, then I may have something playing in the background. Like I said, a podcast, an audiobook occasionally, some music, something like that. Generally, I'm not going to be doing a lot on my phone because I know that can be a rabbit trail, and so you got to be very careful if you're someone that's active in social media. You got to be very careful. If you're going to give yourself some breaks, and we talk about building in breaks to your schedule. If you're going to give yourself a break, you got to be very disciplined about that break. And if that's an area where you struggle, then, the feedback would be, you really don't want to give yourself a break until you get to a place where you got a little bit more focus, a little bit more discipline about it. Especially if you know that that can be kind of a rabbit trail for you. So, again, you kind of see the note. You really want to assign yourself some time where you are free from distractions in order to focus and kind of churn through the work where you're needing to produce. Now, ultimately, again, said at the beginning, don't want to be too redundant. Give yourself some space if you're someone that needs that kind of noise. My wife is actually someone that can be distracted from too much silence. And so when she is in a groove, she's got something going on, some music or something that she's listening to kind of occupy that part of her mind, so that the part of her mind that is helping her to produce work and be productive is freed up to do that. If she has got too much silence, then she's going to fill that silence with other things, and that will actually be more distracting for her. So you really got to know yourself. You really got to know yourself, and kind of pay attention when you're most productive. What's going on? When you're most productive, where are you? Are you most productive in a certain part of your house? Is it a particular environment? Are you most productive when there is a particular aroma? Some folks use essential oils to help them concentrate and help them focus. Some folks, again, will use white noise or music, something like that. So try to pay attention when you're really productive, when you're locked in, that feeling when you're locked in and you're completely focused and you're just you're banging things out, you're grinding away, you're kind of checking things off your list, so to speak. What's going on in that moment, what's going on in your mind, what's going on in your environment, and you want to do everything that you can to replicate that on a regular basis. And most importantly, we're avoiding those distractions as much as possible. So, all right, so now let's kind of transition. We're going to spend the last 20 minutes or so of our time together tackling the biggest enemy to managing your time, the biggest enemy, excuse me, the biggest enemy to managing your time. You guys see it, you guys know it, I know you're familiar with it. Procrastination. Procrastination is the thief of time, and it is the biggest obstacle. It is the biggest obstacle that we face when it comes to managing our time and being productive. So what is procrastination all about? What is procrastinate? Where does it come from? How does it work? Let's look at what we would call the ABCs of procrastination. So activating event, there's an activating event. Essentially, there's something that we need to do that we're trying to avoid doing. That's what initiates procrastination. That's what gives birth to procrastination. There is something out there, something on the horizon that needs to get done that we don't want to do, that we want to avoid doing. And so the moment that conflict exists, I got to do A, I don't want to do A, procrastination is conceived. Procrastination is conceived, and it's a variety of things: studying, doing research, chores, household chores, paying bills, right? Oh, I'll get to that tomorrow. I'll get to that tomorrow. That's the conception. The conception of procrastination is that there's something that needs to get done, and for a variety of reasons, we don't want to do it. We want to do whatever we can to avoid it. Whatever you're avoiding, that is the conception of procrastination. Procrastination grows from our hidden feelings about the tasks. And so that's where feelings that will cause us to delay, that will control our response. There's something about that. There's a belief system associated with the task. So for a number of us, you may be familiar with this. One of the most prevalent fears, I think at one point in time, it was ranked as the second highest reported fear that anyone had in the US, and that was the fear of public speaking. The fear of public speaking. Many folks have a fear of public speaking. And so there may be an event, there may be an activity that would involve us public speaking. And so we are avoiding that. And part of that avoidance comes from our feelings about the event, about the activity, about the task. And so in this situation, our belief system about, in this particular example, public speaking is what sort of grows the procrastination. The fact that we don't want to public speak is where where procrastination is conceived, and then it grows, it forms because of our feelings about it, and ultimately there are consequences. What do we actually do? And there's two approaches. To how we work through procrastination. There's the rational response. I dread our monthly staff meetings, but I'm going to attend with a positive attitude. So that we have some choices here. We have some options here, which is, essentially, do we stop procrastination before it can fully form, or do we give into procrastination? And so we take a more irrational approach, which is, I hate the monthly staff meetings, I'm going to skip it and hope, the boss, hope my manager, hope my team lead doesn't know that I'm not there. And so that is then procrastination fully formed. Is there's the staff meeting. I don't want to go to the staff meeting. I've got a belief system about the staff meeting. And so therefore I'm going to choose to procrastinate. I'm going to choose to avoid the staff meeting, not go to the staff meeting, and hope that there are no negative consequences around that, as opposed to taking the opposite approach, which is to cut off procrastination right at the start and do the thing that I'm not necessarily wanting to do, but I need to do. So that is kind of where procrastination comes from. Before we proceed, before we move on, let me pause and see if there are any thoughts, any comments, any reactions to procrastination. Is this something that folks are wrestling with? Is procrastination a real challenge for you? Or is it more just about getting organized? Is procrastination a real challenge for folks that are on the session with us today? And you're in a safe space, so no judgment. If procrastination is something that you wrestle with, let us know. If it's not, it's not. But be great to know if there are folks that are wrestling with it. Okay. All right. Well, you may be typing, so the chat window is open, and as you may be typing in your response. But helpful to know. So some characteristics of those of us. I am guilty. I will tell the truth. Procrastination is absolutely something that I wrestle with and work to overcome. So some of the characteristics exhibited by individuals that procrastinate: low self-confidence, feeling incapable of performing at the level. Part of the reason why we avoid an activity is because of our belief that we're not particularly good at it. Part of the reason why folks avoid public speaking is because they believe they're not very good at public speaking. And so there is some low self-esteem, some low self-confidence associated with procrastinating. Someone did type into the chat that they struggle with procrastinating a lot. You don't want to do it, and then the weight of the consequence it does get us to change our mind. So the game is actually is right, is to be able to always change your mindset. Yeah, I think that's an interesting point, is that generally when we procrastinate, generally we know that we shouldn't procrastinate. You know, that's kind of the irony, is that I think it is a rare situation where someone procrastinates and they're actually okay with it. You know, it's like, yeah, I'll get to it later, and, you know, I'm not going to do that. And, you know, I think that is kind of portrayed in movies and, you know, things, sort of that slacker. Oh, yeah, I'll get to it later. I'll get to it later. But I think generally many of us, when we avoid doing something, it weighs on us because we know it's something that we're supposed to do. So, yeah, I think that's a great point. Someone said, you know, that they like to get their time-sensitive things done right away. Procrastination is not a particular challenge for them, which I absolutely respect. I think it is a very disciplined mind that is able to do that is able to kind of prioritize and say, all right, these things got to get done. Let me just sit down and get them done. So kudos to you. And then someone else shared, and I think I absolutely can relate to this as well, that when we get overwhelmed, you start to lose that motivation. And once once that the energy, the motivation, the energy, and that's kind of what motivation is. It's internal energy to compel you to act. When that energy is low, it becomes a negative self-fulfilling prophecy, if you will. It becomes this cycle that becomes hard to break, and you know, so we feel overwhelmed, and so we don't have a lot of energy, and so we don't do what we're supposed to do, and the weight of not doing what we're supposed to do weighs on us heavily, and so it becomes that much more difficult to do the next thing. I absolutely relate to that. It becomes like these dominoes, and so how do we break that cycle? How do we get out of it? We're going to actually look at some techniques here in just a minute, but there is a way to break that cycle. There is a way to get out of that trap of not having a lot of motivation and feeling overwhelmed, and therefore not getting things done. You know, so again, some other characteristics: too busy. You know, so, you know, as someone that procrastinates, you know, there's always the I can't do that because I've got too many other things going on, and generally we're creating other things to do to avoid doing the thing that we don't want to do. There's some stubbornness and pride associated with it. You know, I'm not ready to do that right now. I'll get to that when I'm ready to get to it. Doesn't matter that we've been given a deadline by our organization. You know, that doesn't coincide with my schedule, so therefore I'm not going to do it right now. So that, you know, it really is kind of procrastination hidden or wrapped up in some stubbornness or pride. There's manipulation or control involved. And so, you know, we will avoid doing something as a way to assert some dominance. You know, very similar kind of goes hand in hand with the stubbornness or pride thing. You know, they can't start if I'm not there. So, you know, I'm not ready to be there. So, you know, you can't start the meeting. I don't like monthly staff meetings, but you know what? You're not going to start the meeting without me. And so, you know, we sort of procrastinating is also a sign of, you know, some control or manipulation stuff going on. It's a way to cope with pressure. You know, so it is overcoming procrastination is a challenge because it delays decision making. And it's easier to just kind of come with an excuse or delay or put it off. If we have an important decision to make and we're not exactly sure what decision to make, one of the ways that we cope is don't make a decision. That's not productive. Ultimately, the decision still needs to be made. But, procrastinators will use the fact that it is a pressure-filled decision, and to cope will just not make a decision, or avoid making a decision, and ultimately that really is just about coping. And ultimately, there is a sign of, kind of a frustrated victim. You can't get the project done. You feel like a victim. And so, it's how are others able to get it done? It's, one of our friends said that, procrastination is not necessarily something they struggle with. And so as individuals that struggle with procrastinating, the temptation could be to look to others with some, kind of resentment, to put ourselves in the victim situation and say, well, why are they able to get it done? And why am I not able to get it done? And so, we want to avoid that. And so how do we do that? How do we move from these characteristics to be, more like an individual that is able to get stuff done? So there are some basic reasons why we procrastinate. And I think this is helpful. If we're going to get to a solution, we got to understand the problem. Basically, the task is difficult, it's time consuming, we may not have the requisite knowledge or skills, and ultimately there's a fear or intimidation involved. Those are really kind of the basic components to why we procrastinate. And I think if we take a second to think about why it is I'm avoiding this particular thing, many times it can be tied to one of these four areas. But there are also some more complex reasons for why we procrastinate. We procrastinate because maybe we are perfectionists. And so one of the reasons why we may procrastinate is because we want it to be done perfectly. And if we can't get it done perfectly, we're not going to do it. There may be some anger, hostility associated with it. We may have had a negative experience with this particular thing in the past, with this particular activity in the past. We don't want to revise our resume because the last time we submitted our resume for someone to review, they were very harsh. It was a very insulting experience, and we don't want to put ourselves in that position again. We may have a low threshold for frustration. So if the task is challenging, and we just may not be well equipped with working through the frustrating elements of doing a complex task. We may not be excited about public speaking because part of public speaking is preparing remarks, and that takes research and time and a degree of detail orientation, and it can be complex. And we just may not have a very high threshold for working through complex things, complex tasks. And so we just avoid doing it. We put it off. And ultimately, again, kind of referring back to that low self-confidence idea, we just get down on ourselves. Part of the reason why we procrastinate is because it may not come very easily. It may not be particularly intuitive. It may not be something that's, a little bit more natural to us. And so we get very down on ourselves. We get very frustrated with ourselves. And ultimately, I don't like that feeling. I don't like the feeling of beating myself up. I don't like the feeling of having low motivation. I don't like the feeling of having low energy. And so I'm just going to avoid putting myself in that situation, because as I start to work on my remarks, as I start to prepare to attend this meeting, I am not as effective as I want to be. It's not as fluid as I think it should be. And so therefore I'm going to start beating myself up, and I don't like beating myself up. So I'm just going to avoid doing it altogether. So how do we overcome? How do we get to the place where we are able to prioritize and do the things that need to get done, whether we are particularly excited about it, whether it's something that comes natural to us or not. How do we overcome procrastinating? Well, first and foremost, rely on those past successes. Remind yourself of when you got something done similar in the past, even if this is something brand new. Can you relate it to something that you've done in the past? Did you have a success? Did you have an accomplishment in the past that you can relate to this new project, to this new activity that you're able to overcome? Break it up into manageable parts, and that kind of then segues into the 5-minute plan. So the 5-minute plan says if there's something that is very difficult for you to do, if there's something that you just do not, you get this adverse, almost almost this very, like, you almost get ill, you almost get sick at the notion, at the idea of having to do this. Do it for 5 minutes. Just do it for 5 minutes. And if at the end of 5 minutes you are so miserable that you can't go on, then you stop. You stop and you select a time, you schedule yourself a time a little bit later in the day to do it for another 5 minutes. But if you find at the end of the 5 minutes that you tolerated it and that it wasn't as miserable as you thought, then do it for another 5 minutes. And you just kind of get through it in 5-minute increments. So you're breaking up the project into smaller components. And one of the ways to do that is to implement the 5-minute plan. The other thing is to develop some accountability by declaring it out loud, by making your intentions public. There's a project that you want to get done. You're not looking forward to doing it, or you don't know where to start. You can start by telling people that this is something that you want to do. And therefore building an accountability circle. To that end, find a role model. So is there someone out there that's done it before that can help you to walk the path, that can help you to remain focused, that can hold you accountable, that will send you an email, pick up the phone, give you a phone call. Hey, Charles, where are you? Last week, you said you had done this. Have you taken the next steps? Have you committed to doing those things we agreed you were going to do last week? If you haven't done them yet, all right, let's take some time. Let's start working on that. Sometimes you have to change your environment. Remember, we talked at the very beginning, trying to capture, take note of what's going on when you're most productive, what's happening when you are your most productive. Can you duplicate that? Can you replicate that environment, those surroundings? You may have to move where you are in order to get to that place where you are most productive. Create a daily to-do list. We did that at the very beginning with that schedule, with that plan, where we come up with our goals. We identify the tasks associated with reaching our goals, then we prioritize the tasks. We prioritize the tasks in order to meet our goals. So craft that daily to-do list. And you know what, team, this is the last one. I want to end on this one because I think it's particularly underrated, but so important, especially if you're someone kind of like me that gets overwhelmed and that gets really upset with myself when I procrastinate, when I put off doing something that I need to do. Give yourself some grace. Give yourself some space to mess up and to try again. It's okay. Now, ultimately, there has to come a point of no return. Ultimately, if you're trying to pursue a new opportunity, there's a deadline by which you have to submit your application. You have to submit your resume. And then so therefore, ultimately, there needs to be a deadline for you to submit your resume to a mentor, a teammate, a colleague, in order to get some comments so that you can then submit your resume for the opportunity. So there have to be some kind of hard deadlines. But even in that, give yourself some grace. None of us is perfect. None of us is perfect. We all get the same 24 hours a day. We want to maximize those to the best of our ability. And in your effort to do that, give yourself some grace to be human, to fall down, to stand up, to dust yourself off, and to go do it again. Give yourself some grace. That's what I have for you today, team. Before we close out the session altogether, I do want to take a moment and see if there are any additional questions, comments, thoughts that you'd like to share before we wrap up for the afternoon. Oh, Janie, thank you. I appreciate your feedback and participation today. All right. Well, listen, everyone, thank you all so much. Thank you again. It's great to see some comments coming in. Thank you so much. Thank you for using the chat. Thank you for engaging with us. Please, please, if you did not yet enter your name, if you did not enter your name into the chat so that we can give you credit for being here as part of our attendance tracking, please go ahead and enter your name into the chat. I have really enjoyed our time together, 3 sessions down. Really excited for the next sessions that we have coming up. Continue to tune in. Bring someone with you. Bring someone with you. We said that last time. Don't keep all this good stuff to yourself, right? Bring someone with you and tell someone about it, and let's grow and win together. Take care, Santa Barbara. Appreciate you. Stay safe, guys. We're sending lots of prayers and good thoughts your way, coping with those wildfires. So please stay safe. And again, thank you for your time. Take care, everyone. Appreciate you.